Hey guys, it's Christy with Christy's Custom Creations. And as you all know, I love me some glitter. And so I'm always looking for different things to throw glitter on. And today I have decided to put some glitter on some trauma shears. A lot of doctors, nurses, paramedics, people like that use trauma shears. And I just found a pretty nice pair of trauma shears on Amazon. And then I've got these silicone brushes and then also some UV resin that I bought on Amazon. I will have everything that I use linked down in the description box below so that it's easier for you to find. So now I am picking out a couple of these silicone brushes that I want to use, and I've got some aluminum foil laid out, and I'm just going to work over this foil, and you'll see here in just a little bit why I decided to do that. And now I've got my nail lamp. I also purchased my nail lamp on Amazon, and I use my nail lamp for all kind of different projects. I use it for my ice lid tumblers. I've got a tutorial on that if you haven't seen that. I do my nails with it. I do all kind of projects with my nail lamp. So I highly recommend this nail lamp. It's got a high power to it, and it works really well for me. So now I've just got my scissors, and I'm going to go ahead and tape off the handles. I'm going to tape off the handles because I don't want UV resin and glitter getting on the metal part of the scissors. I want to keep it isolated just to the handles. So this is just regular old painter's tape that I've got, and you'll see me use it in a bunch of my videos. I use it for just about everything. So I'm just putting the painter's tape right here on the metal part where it meets the plastic handles, just to keep it from getting any of the UV or glitter on it. And I'm gonna do it to both sides. Now, one thing, we are going to we are going to use the UV resin on these handles, and then we're gonna glitter the handles. But before we cure the UV resin, we are going to pull the tape off, because if we go ahead and cure it before we pull the tape off, we would have a very hard time getting the tape off because the UV resin would be cured. So what I'm doing here, I've got my UV resin, and I've just got my little brush here, my silicone brush, and I am smoothing my UV resin out all over my handles. Now, y'all, I don't know why I decided to do it this way for the whole entire first half of this video. Don't waste your time with these silicone brushes smearing the UV resin around. It was a really great idea in my head, but it was so much more difficult than it needed to be. So for this whole first part of this video, you will see me wasting a whole bunch of time pushing this UV resin around with this little bitty silicone brush. Use a gloved finger. It works so much better. I was about halfway through and I was like, what am I doing? Like, I was having such a hard time pushing this UV resin around, and then I realized, hey, just put a finger cot on your finger and push it around that way. It was so much easier. So trust me when I tell you, don't be like me and waste a bunch of time doing it like this. Just use a gloved finger. It's so much easier. Now, if you wanted to paint the base of these scissors a solid color, by all means, you definitely can. So I just decided to go with black because I wanted to see how this glitter would look over a black base. It's kind of like a semi-translucent glitter. It's a light blue that I'm using, but I wanted to see how it looked over a light base, and I ended up using 2 coats of glitter over the handles. But had I went ahead and just gave the handle a quick quick squirt with the spray paint and made it a light blue or a lighter color, I wouldn't have needed 2 coats of glitter on there, but I did just to make sure that it was nice and pretty and blue, since I did put it over a black base. So the glitter I've got here, it's called Fairy Godmother. It is by My Glitter Line, KCC Glitter, and you can find it at kccglitter.com. This is a high flash glitter, so it is incredibly sparkly. It's super pretty, and notice I pulled the tape off of the scissors there before I stuck it underneath the UV light. And like I explained before, I did that so that my tape does not get stuck to the scissors and we don't end up having a mess. It just keeps things nice and clean, keeps your lines nice and crisp, and I let it go through a 60-second cycle on my nail lamp before moving on, before taking it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and tape it off again. There's a couple little spots that I saw that I kind of missed a little bit, and I know I've mentioned it plenty of times before that I should have just used a gloved finger. I should have used a gloved finger because I was kind of like making bald spots a little bit on my handle, pushing the UV resin around with the silicone brush. So like I said, just use a gloved finger and it's so much better. And another thing too, I noticed that by using a gloved finger, I was able to get better coverage with my UV resin than I was with the silicone brush, because I actually ended up making a little bit of a bump on the handle here because I was just pushing it around with the silicone brush and I wasn't able to actually like get in there with my finger and really just make sure that I got good coverage and didn't have it clumped up anywhere. Because as soon as you put that UV resin underneath that light, boom, it starts to harden immediately. And so it's not self-leveling. Like when you put epoxy on a tumbler and a tumbler's on a spinner, it's self-leveling, and so it's gonna level out. It does not work that way with this UV resin. So you want to make sure that you've got good, even coverage. So I've got my second layer of glitter on there, and I'm going to let it go ahead and run through a second 60-second cycle. Okay, so it has dried, and I'm going to go ahead and get started on this second side over here, the other handle. And I'm just going to do the exact same thing you saw me do before. I already have this handle taped off, so I'm going to ridiculously push this UV resin around with this silicone brush, and soon realized to just put a glove on my hand. But y'all can learn from my mistakes. Y'all can learn from my my serious waste of time here. One thing that I think is really awesome about this UV resin is it doesn't stay sticky. Like, I've had some issues with some different UV resins staying sticky. I just put this one through numerous cycles under my nail lamp, and it's not sticky at all. Any of the projects that I've used with it, like the ice cube tumbler lids and these scissors here, I can't think of any others that I've done it right off the top of my head, but I've done other projects with this UV resin. Oh, I've done some pins with them, and they're not sticky, and that's the biggest complaint that I've seen with UV resin. So like I said, I'll have this UV resin here linked down in the description box. I'm sure there's numerous other brands out there that don't get sticky, but this is the best one that I have found that's not sticky. But also, how cool is it that you can literally glitter just about anything with it? And like I mentioned earlier, it's not, with epoxy, it's self-leveling and it's obviously very slow drying. So gravity is going to pull epoxy down. So if we were to glitter these scissor handles with epoxy, I would need to find a way to spin them. And yeah, I could probably stick them in a pool noodle and let them spin around my turner that way, but this is so fast. I literally made this pair of scissors here in no time at all. I think it was from start to finish, and working through all my own little hiccups and everything that I did, and just kind of trying to figure out the best way to do this. I think I made this pair of scissors in like an hour, and they were completely dry, ready to go, and everything within that hour time frame. But after ditching the silicone brush, things move along much faster for me. So honestly, I think I could probably knock out a pair of these glitter scissors in about 30 minutes, which is awesome. I mean, and that's what I love about UV resin, how fast it is. And this UV resin is actually like really clear too. It's very pretty, but you want to make sure and do multiple thin layers, because if you start globbing it up, your scissors aren't going to be smooth. All right, so it is time for our second coat of glitter on this second handle. And like I said, this glitter is Fairy Godmother. It's a beautiful light blue. It's got a high sparkle finish on it, and it is just, it's gorgeous. It sparkles so pretty under epoxy and under resin. I've got numerous other glitter colors that are really pretty, but in the same high sparkle, high flash category, I have multiple colors. I've got a really pretty yellow, hot pink, lime green, orange. I've got some very pretty colors in that same collection. So check them out. Like I said, it was kccglitter.com. We've got some really beautiful colors on there. If you haven't checked it out yet, be sure to. So here I found one little spot that was kind of like a lump on the handle because I've used just a little bit too much of the UV resin, and it was kind of globbed up a little bit, and it wasn't super smooth in that area. You could definitely tell it was like a glob that had dried too quickly underneath the UV resin. So I just took a piece of 220 grit sandpaper and I sanded that down, and then also I took a little bit of UV resin and patched up a little spot that needed a little bit more glitter on it, and just let that run through a cycle, curing underneath the light. So now I'm going to go ahead and seal this glitter in, and I want to seal it in because I'm going to, once that is nice and dry, I'm going to sand these handles because I want my glitter to be, or my handles to be nice and smooth. When you're using a pair of scissors, you don't want to feel glitter, you know, chunks of glitter or anything like that up underneath the handles. So I'm just sealing it in nicely before giving it a good sanding. So I let the scissors go through multiple cycles underneath the UV lamp. I probably went through about 3 cycles on each side, and I did that to ensure that it was nice and dry before sanding. So now I'm just going to go in with my 220 grit sandpaper, and my sandpaper, I use the same sandpaper for all of my cups, pens, everything that I make. I use this sandpaper, and it's 220 grit, and it has an adhesive back to it. And what I love about that is you can see it sticks to my fingers, so it gives me, I'm able to do so much with it. I can get in there in the inside the handles, inside the little loop and everything, and it's just with it sticking to my fingers like that, it just makes it so much easier to control. And I'm just, you don't need to sand too terribly hard, but you want to get in there and make sure that you knock off any of those little bumps that may be trying to poke up, because like I said, when you're using a pair of scissors, you definitely don't want to feel the glitter underneath in your hands. You want it to be nice and smooth, like a pair of scissors should be. And I don't remember if I mentioned this earlier or not, but the reason that I am working over a piece of aluminum foil is whenever I put my nail lamp down and I hold my scissors underneath the nail lamp, the aluminum foil reflects back up, and it cures the entire scissors. The entire scissors. It cures everything from every angle because it's reflecting back up. I don't know if that makes sense or not. It makes sense in my head, but that is why I am working over a piece of aluminum foil. I find that it helps cure that UV resin so much faster working over a reflective surface like that. All right, so as you can see, I'm just checking and double checking to make sure that we've got everywhere nice and smooth. It really doesn't, it looks like I'm doing a lot more sanding than I really am. I'm just trying to make sure that I have every little spot covered and taken care of here. So once I get done with my sanding, I'm just going to take my scissors in the bathroom and I'm going to wash them with Dawn dish soap. So they are nice and clean and they're ready for a coat of UV resin. And when you sand, it's going to make it look really super dull. It does that if you sand epoxy tumblers, whatever you sand, whether it be epoxy or UV resin, it's gonna make it look super dull. But as soon as you put another coat over it, it makes the shine come right back. So don't stress or worry about it. So now that my scissors are taped off, it was at this point that I realized, hey, I could just use a gloved finger or a finger cot to spread this UV resin around and it would make my life so much easier. So I've got my finger cot on. I bought a big bag of these finger cots from Amazon, and I will also have those linked down in the description box below. And I've got my UV resin. So I'm just going to do just like I did before, and I'm going to put the UV resin here onto the handle over the glitter, and then I'm just going to use my finger cot versus that silicone brush, and I'm going to smooth it around. And y'all, when I say that this was so much easier this way, it was so much easier this way. I highly recommend just using a gloved finger or a finger cot versus trying to use a silicone brush. I think I mentioned this earlier, but one thing that I found by using the finger cot or like a gloved finger is I was really able to make sure I didn't have any areas kind of glob up. I was able to keep my layers, my coats over this glitter here nice and thin. So I highly recommend doing it this way, but it was definitely much better to do it this way. But one thing I did notice is the UV resin that on my gloved finger here did start to kind of glob up a little bit. So unless you want to like continue using finger cot, unless you want to use finger cot after finger cot after finger cot while you do this, keep your finger away from the light, because that light reflects off of that aluminum foil and it does come up and get globbed up onto the finger cot there. So if you want to keep using it, keep it away from the aluminum foil and the light. So as you can see here, I almost forgot to pull the tape off before putting it underneath the UV light. I actually put it up underneath the UV light for just a couple seconds and then I was like, oh no, and I pulled it off really quick, so it didn't have time to harden up or anything like that. But definitely make sure you pull off that tape beforehand. If you do forget to pull the tape off beforehand, you can take a craft knife and you can cut right there along the tape line and the UV resin and then pull the tape, but try to avoid that because it's gonna make things so much harder. So that was the last bit of UV resin that I am putting on these scissors. My handles are nice and smooth. They're really pretty and shiny. So now basically all I'm going to do is let these scissors sit underneath this UV light. So what I did here was I let this layer dry and then I just did multiple cycles. I held my scissors about like this and then I put them under the lamp. I just set them down underneath the lamp and then I'd flip them over for another cycle and just let them cook under there. And I think I put them through about 6 cycles and here they are. They are nice and cured and beautiful and sparkly, and I absolutely love how these turned out. I'm actually giving them to one of my Patreon members and a very good friend of mine, Robin. She works in the medical field and she saw me make these on a Facebook Live in my Facebook group. She was like, oh my gosh, I love them. And I was like, well, they are yours then. So I'm giving them to her. They are so pretty, but I'm definitely making more because these were a lot of fun to make. And if you want to get your hands on this beautiful glitter color, Fairy Godmother, you can find it at kccglitter.com. I'll have that link below. And I really hope y'all enjoyed this tutorial. If you liked it, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And as always, I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Y'all take care. Bye.